Well, hello, it's Karen Ann Harlos, and here we are today. We're going to discuss why I absolutely believe, without a doubt, that legalization is the correct libertarian position over decriminalization, and why I think some libertarians get it wrong, and despite the rumors to the contrary that I am just some unmovable purist, that this is actually the way to move the needle really forward. Alrighty, everyone, this is not going to be a long show, and it is entirely unscripted. I have no notes. I am doing it pre-recorded, so you'll probably see some jump cuts where I, mess up. But before we really get into it, I want to do the YouTube stuff. You see me looking up here because I am looking, here we go, for my overlays. I need to delete the old one so I don't get confused, but here it is. Please subscribe down at the bottom. You can wait to the end to make sure that this is the type of channel you'd like to subscribe to, or you could just do me a solid and do it right now. I know libertarians hate being told what to do, so maybe I should tell you don't subscribe. You can also follow me on Twitter. I am at Karen Ann Harlos. I can promise you that it is usually entertaining. But last but not least, I would really appreciate your support on Patreon at patreon.com/Pink Flame of Liberty. Despite what the MAGA supporters will tell you, the economy is not good, and it certainly isn't the best right now for creators. So I can't tell you how much I appreciate your support at any level. So if you could go down there, I'd really appreciate it. And you do get some perks. You can read about them. But one of them is that you get advance showings of my other channels, Jurassic Dictionary and Pink Parliamentarian. I also appreciate any after the fact. Super thanks. That's what it's called. Super thanks. And in case you are wondering, I'd been mentioning this a couple times, and this will be the last of the chit chat. My iPhone camera just doesn't record great anymore. The camera on it is usually great, and it just started getting grainy. So I'm using a webcam that I'm not entirely happy with. Either finally broke down and ordered a mirrorless that will do 4K. It is budget friendly though, so it got great reviews, but if it sucks, I'll return it. But video quality will be improving. Audio quality always has been good. I have a mixing board. So let's get right to the discussion. Again, this is ad lib. So we shall see how it goes, how these thoughts have been bouncing around in my head. So first, let's do some definitions. Don't come at me with, well, actually, in this area, this definition is a little bit different. We are using broad-based definitions. And I think once you start talking about definitions, it becomes clear. So what exactly is decriminalization? And also, let me get this statement right up front. I certainly prefer decriminalization to the system we have right now when it comes to things like what substances you put in your body. I have to be real careful on how I word things on YouTube. Or what activities you engage in with your body. Yes, obviously, I certainly would, if I could only pick between the system we have now in most states or decriminalization, I would pick decriminalization every day of the week and twice on Fridays. But right now we're talking about what should libertarians ultimately advocate for. So what does decriminalization do? It keeps users of such services or substances out of jail, basically. It makes them not criminal offenses. But notice what it doesn't do. So that's great. Let's all admit right there that that's great. Now let's talk about what it doesn't do. It doesn't remove the potential for civil fines. Should we ever advocate anything that could impose a civil fine? Now, I'll talk about the cons of legalization too, don't get me wrong, but just be clear on that. Civil fines are still on the table. But more importantly, it only gives benefits to the user side. It does not give benefits to the producer side. Sometimes in issues, now that I'm long enough into this video, I think I can use this word, such as prostitution, sometimes it does give protections to the producer side. But in general, particularly with substances, it does not. And because for some people it is still criminal, or even if it's not criminal, it's not quote unquote sanctioned, there is still a very dangerous black market. You don't have organizations that can openly come out and you get voluntary certification on the ratings and purities of the substances or the lack of disease or performance qualifications of the purveyors of other types of services, because it's still done in the dark. It is great that you're not thrown in jail, but it doesn't help solve some of the real societal problems. It doesn't stop gangs from monopolizing these industries. And here is the fact. Well, let's get into this with now, let's compare it with legalization. With legalization, it's got the state seal of approval. Now, I know we don't want the state seal of approval, but I'm asking you to think of this. Think of something that you like. Let's say vegans were on the ascendancy and they outlawed the eating of meat. Would you want your meat to just be decriminalized, or would you want to be able to just go into a grocery store and buy it, even though it might have taxes and regulations on it? Because that is the objections of libertarians, that with legalization comes regulation. And that's a double-edged sword. It certainly is, because we believe in voluntary regulation. But you can't even have voluntary regulation with decriminalization because it's still in the shadows. Let me give you another example. I'm a paralegal. There's no licensing for paralegals. There is maybe in some states, but in most states there isn't. I am certified through a voluntary organization. Couldn't do that if being a paralegal was illegal. So, you need to separate these issues in your mind. When I advocate for legalization, I am not advocating for state regulation. What I am advocating for is that it be treated like any other product in the market. And the fact is, whether we like it or not, all products in the market generally are regulated. Regulation is an entirely different issue. You can push for legalization while still saying the regulation should be voluntary. But if you want to get rid of the violence and the black markets, you need to stop treating these services and goods like differently than any other ones. Yes, there will be regulations. We can fight about those later. Make it so that the purveyors and the users don't go to jail. And that's what happens with legalization. Isn't it better to have both sides of the equation? And let me tell you, you would still have a choice. Say you don't want to pay the extra taxes. I get it. Or you're a purveyor and you don't want to comply with the additional regulations. You always have the option to go illegal. You're illegal right now. So what's the difference? This is granting greater choices for those who would just prefer to work within the system and then improve those processes as we go. That is why legalization is superior, because there is more safety. Whether or not you agree with how the safety is enforced, forget about the regulations. We're talking about the violence that happens when you're dealing with black markets. You can't tie the two together. Regulation is an entirely separate issue. We're against regulation of milk products. Do you think milk should be illegal right now? Just all of it in general, because it's regulated and it has to be homogenized in most areas. I know there are some exceptions. No, you don't. So keep those two issues regulated. We need to legalize freedom, whatever it might be. And then we work on chipping down the regulation. If you hold making this something that you can do without having to meet somebody with a gun in a back alley hostage to no regulations, you're going to end up getting neither. Now I'm going to make a controversial analogy to the immigration situation, where people will say, well, I believe in open immigration once the welfare state is gone. Those are two totally separate issues, because not only should there not be a regulation, a welfare system for illegal immigrants or undocumented immigrants, whatever you wish to call them, there shouldn't be one for people who popped out of a vagina here. What makes us so special that you're not saying that people shouldn't have children until the welfare state is eliminated, or people shouldn't be able to move to another state because they might get on the welfare system? If I move from Colorado to Florida and God forbid something happens to me, I end up on the Florida regulation system. Why do we allow free migration between states, between cities, between counties? Statistically speaking, more people per capita are on welfare in Denver than where I live in a relatively affluent county. Should we bar people from moving from Denver to Castle Rock? It makes no sense. Those are two totally separate issues. You can support the right of free movement while still opposing the welfare state. You can be in complete favor of what you put in your body being absolutely out in the open and be able to be done legally in a shop without being in favor of the regulation. And I know how oppressive the regulations can be. Colorado, I'll give Colorado credit here, was the first one to thumb its nose at the federal government and say, we don't care if you made marijuana a Schedule I drug. It's fully legal here. And we faced a lot of consequences with the people who, owned the shops, weren't able to bank with federal banks and things like that. And that caused those businesses to have to be cash only for a while. They were targets for robbery. This is why you need full legalization, to get rid of the crime element. And remember, you always have the option to go illegal, just like you do now. So I'm not going to make this any more complicated. If I get some pushback in the comments that I think need addressing, I'll do some follow-up shows, but I promised everyone I would give you my short and dirty answer on why I believe that is the correct libertarian position, and I have done that, and I hope you have an awesome weekend. Mi guapas de libertad.
You gotta take what you're given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians, or choose to be an accountant because it's safe in a business, not because they wanna